Okay, so glass is a quick topic because it's not a material that you really have access to here at the school, but you might get a few questions on the exam, particularly multiple choice questions to do with glass. So the reality is glass is actually a very common material these days. The two things it's used for mostly are to do with electronic systems. So the glass used on your smartphone, for example, is a big use of glass, and then it's also very prominent. You'll see all around Bangkok, for example, a lot of glass in the buildings because it has very useful structural properties. So here's a very short list of things you sort of need to know. So at the end of this, you need to be able to list the characteristics of glass, different applications of different kinds of glass, and talk a little bit about the environmental features that make glass really good for recycling. So glass is a crystalline substance, meaning that the molecules that make up the glass sort of fit together in a pattern, and the molecular and atomic structure of glass lets light shine through it. And so if you watch this video, I'd recommend watching it. It goes into more detail about the actual structure of glass. When glass is heated, it turns into what's called an amorphous substance. So that is, if you ever watched a video of people blowing glass, it turns into a very thick liquid where all the molecules are kind of moving past each other. And so crystalline is the structure when it's in its solid glass form, and amorphous is what it's like once it's heated and the molecules are able to pass by each other. So again, another really good video, recommend watching it. It's not very long. It shows you how glass is made. It's really quite fascinating. But glass comes from silica, which is the main component of sand. It's mixed together with some soda and lime and heated to really high temperatures. And that turns it into that amorphous shape. And then once the glass is allowed to cool, it takes on its glass-like properties. Okay, so this is something you should be able to explain is some of the properties of glass and how they are relevant to product design. So the transparency is a huge one. The fact that it's non-porous and unreactive also makes it really good for holding things. It's also very strong in certain directions, so that makes it one of the reasons it's good as a building material. By adding different metallic substances to the glass when it's in its amorphous state, it can change color, which is useful, and it's also very hard and difficult to scratch. So we'll start with color. So you can see here, these are all different metallic oxides. Okay, so copper, nickel, gold, and when they're added to the silicone, once it's heated, it makes the glass refract light differently and makes it look like a different color. So that's a very, very useful feature of glass. It's normally transparent, so the transparency is huge in terms of design context. So for example, you can see things that are stored in it, you can see into buildings, a lot of natural light can get into buildings. So that's why it's such a favored material for building design. Strength-wise, so it's very high under compressive strength. So if it's being pushed down from the top and the bottom, so if it's being squeezed, it's very strong. It's got very low tensile strength, however, right? So if you try to bend it, it's not going to resist very much. It's going to shatter pretty quickly. Part of the reason it doesn't have very high tensile strength is it's very brittle. Now, this slide is probably one of the ones I would recommend really taking notes on. You often get multiple choice questions on the different ways that glass is treated to make it safer. So the three different ways that glass can be made safer. It can be annealed. So annealing is basically is very much like metal. It's cooling it really slowly so the crystals end up being bigger. And so when the glass shatters, it shatters into larger pieces. Okay, so annealing is one process that is done on glass. Tempering is reheating the glass, so kind of like you do it with metal, and then cooling it again. And what happens when it's tempered is it makes it stronger, and when it does break, it'll shatter completely into really, really small pieces. And then the third one, which is like your car windows, laminated glass is actually 2 layers of plastic with a layer of plastic in between. So even when it shatters, you don't end up with glass all over the place. You can see here in terms of hardness, glass is kind of up there on the Mohs hardness scale at about a level sort of 6.57. So that kind of puts it closer to things like steel, nails, and knives. And it's non-porous. So this means, because it's non-porous, it makes it ideal for, meaning it doesn't have any holes in it, right? So carbonated beverages used to all be in glass bottles because the carbonation wouldn't escape through the glass very quickly and it would stay fizzy for longer. When you do science, a lot of your beakers are glass because they are unreactive and non-porous, and so they don't react with the acids and bases that you put in them. Okay, and it's a very popular food storage solution because you're not going to get any toxins leaking into your food, and similarly the food's not going to react with the container. So on your phone is probably the glass you interact with the most often in your life. So your phone is very likely made of Gorilla Glass because it has to be extremely tough to withstand everything you put your phone through. So Gorilla Glass, there's a whole process that they go through to make Gorilla Glass. It's a chemical process that changes the structure of the glass so it's stronger. Highly recommend watching this video. It's really interesting to see how the amorphous glass is turned into actual sheets of glass. So if nothing else, I would watch the video for that. Okay, and so there are a number of different kinds of glass available to designers, so it's worth going through the different kinds. This is another possible topic that should show up as multiple choice questions, okay? The glass that you think of probably the most often is called soda or glass, or soda lime glass. So this is what all of your glass bottles are made of. So mechanically, they've got what's called low thermal shock, meaning that if you like put them in the freezer and then put them in the oven, they will crack, they will shatter. Okay, they're very easy to melt down and recycle again. And so soda lime glass is generally used for things like window panes, drinking glasses, drinking bottles. It's a pretty cheap glass. The glass that is used in your kitchen, so if you might have a glass pot, or you will very likely reckon this is a very iconic design, which we'll talk more about in topic 6. It's a Pyrex measuring cup. So this is glass, and all these beakers. So this is borosilicate glass. So you can see it's still silica, but it's mixed with some other materials. The difference is this has very high resistance to thermal shock. So you can pour hot water in here. You can put it in the microwave. You can heat it over the stove. It's easy to recycle, but you need more energy to recycle it. Generally used in things like kitchenware and laboratory glass, and it's often known as Pyrex. Okay, so borosilicate glass is another kind of glass you should know about. Then there's the tempered glass that we already talked about in a previous slide. So this is one where it's been heated to a very high temperature and then cooled really quickly. Okay, so this gives it high impact resistance, so it makes it quite tough. And it'll shatter into small pieces rather than sharp shards if it does shatter. So it makes it good for things like showers, windows, covers on your phone, easily recycled, but again, you need more energy than just with regular soda lime glass to recycle it. And then laminated glass, you can see here what it would look like in a car. So it's 2 layers of glass with a layer of plastic in between. Very high resistance to shock. It can be recycled, but it takes a bit of more energy because you've got to remove the plastic before you can recycle it. And any sort of use of glass where it might come under a heavy impact, like stairs or cars, is a good place to use laminated glass. And then the last one is fiberglass. So fiberglass it is glass, but it's long strands of glass which are actually woven into a fabric. So these are actually glass fibers. But because it's a fabric, you can lay it over a mold or a form, and then you can add polyester resin to it, which we talked about in the plastic section. And so it's very lightweight. It's very easy to shape into different shapes. This is extremely difficult to recycle, so it has an environmental cost of using fiberglass, but it could be used in things like canoes, tent poles, things like that. Okay, so very quickly, recovery and disposal. It's easy to recycle, particularly the soda lime glass, because it melts down and you can reshape it very easily. So in fact, glass is actually a great material to use in a product if you're trying to design for the circular economy and so that all the materials in your product can be reused to make new materials. And that's it. So there's a video at the end here. If you want to recommend again having a look if you want to see glass recycling in action, and that's the topic on glass.